Is Bitcoin the start of a new downward trend, or is it just a minor correction? I came across this interesting idea about Bitcoin. Here the author tells us that the current pattern is very similar to one we've seen before. First, he carefully highlights the previous peak levels we reached with distinctive red circles, and the exact same thing has happened now. We can see that in 2025 and 2026 we had already reached the highs. He also specifically highlights the sideways movement after the correction with yellow circles. Following these periods, the trend continued, and at this current moment in time, we are in the blue circle, from where another downward movement could potentially begin to unfold. Overall, the situation here actually looks extremely similar. We see a similar sideways movement, and all these circles match up. These are, so to speak, the key moments where Bitcoin was consolidating. And based on this specific idea, we can say that significant and powerful downward movements are expected very soon. And considering that volatility is currently extremely low, we will likely soon see a huge spike. And let's take a much closer look at what was happening within the area marked by the blue circle. Before we saw a strong corrective move, there was just a small candlestick. This also indicated a decrease in volatility. And right now, essentially, the same thing is happening. We see the same extremely small candlestick, and right after that, an impulse began and we dropped significantly lower. Will the same thing happen this time? We don't know, but the situation looks extremely similar, and that can be concerning. To protect yourself, first of all, you really need to fully accept this idea, so that you don't end up losing money if the market actually does go much lower. And secondly, so you can carefully take this into account for your own strategies and ideas regarding various other different positions. So I suggest we analyze ADA. As a matter of fact, this situation is remarkably similar in nature to all the others currently happening with altcoins. So you can utilize this specific example as a helpful reference for other coins as well. First of all, I want to say that I carefully plotted a dynamic trend line that we have touched most often. As we can see, this has happened several times. Let me mark that. The first, the second, the third, and we can quite reasonably expect a fourth time as well. This will serve as a kind of support or a magnet for the price, something it will be drawn to. Right now we see that the price has entered a corrective movement and has come exactly into the volume zone where we stayed for quite a long time, where volatility was low, after which we saw a spike in volatility and then a move toward our resistance levels. Now we've already reached this zone, we can see the volumes here, and at this point everything is really going to be decided. To begin with the analysis, I want to say that if we break through and consolidate below the 0.2413 mark, and most importantly, if we stay below it, at least on the daily time frame, then we can certainly begin to discuss the possibility of a further decline, because we will have consolidated below the volume shelf and it will become a significant level of resistance for us. And from this, it logically follows from this situation that it's better to consider entering a short position, of course, rather than trying to go long and take a position on faith, simply hoping it will shoot higher. And the second significant point we can also consider is if the price simply takes out the stop losses of the long traders who placed them just below this low. In this specific case, if we take them out and at the same time consolidate firmly above the 0.2413 mark, then we can at least safely assume that we will continue our upward momentum toward higher price targets. Mika. But for that to happen, of course, we will also definitely need to see a strong break through the current resistance level. This is a sort of shelf in terms of volume. The level is approximately at 0.2475. If we successfully break through it, then we can continue our upward momentum and set our next targets at the upcoming resistance levels. This is a very key idea that is currently present in almost all altcoins. If we look at it a bit more locally, we can consider a position right now. But of course, this will be on a lower time frame. If we see a breakout and consolidation above the level of 0.2525, then in that case it will be possible to take long positions up to the maximum target of 0.2615, because we will still have a small resistance at 0.2580. As we can see, the price has come to this level more than once, and we have seen a reaction from it each time. Therefore, we need to be extremely cautious here right now. But I'm talking about some local positions here. If we look at the bigger picture, I've explained all the theory to you and pointed out the resistance levels that will be key for us. These are the levels 0.2832, 0.2699, 0.2615, and 0.2525. Don't forget about the volume shelf, because this idea is key. Right now we are relying precisely on this large zone. If we are above it, then everything is good for us and there's quite a big potential for further growth. If we start to consolidate below it, then this probability drops quite significantly. And of course, we should consider more short positions. So Bitcoin, 4 hours. We can clearly see that we were unable to remain in this specific range within the volume zone after all. We spent the entirety of the weekend period right here, but in the end, we witnessed a strong downward impulse and have already reached our key support level. The resistance levels above, which we have previously marked, remain completely valid and highly significant, and this is exactly where we will look to secure our profits if the price reaches this area. Right now, the situation actually looks interesting for a simple reason. We've already reached the support zone and have seen some upward reaction, but at the same time, if you notice, we haven't really moved much higher yet. So, for those who entered from this support level, of course, the first thing to do is to take profits at the 77,700 mark, and then you can try to hold the remaining part for a move higher. If you didn't enter at this level, then I would possibly consider a position with a tight stop in case we break through this mark and consolidate above it, aiming for the nearest target at 79,126, and I would also leave a portion for a potential move higher. Now let's take a look at the liquidation heat maps and identify exactly where the main cascade of this liquidity is currently being concentrated. These are the current liquidation stops for Bitcoin right now, and as we can clearly see, absolutely nothing has changed. The primary zone is sitting around $82,000 to $84,000. We can observe how short sellers entered the market from here and strategically placed their stops just above these recent highs. And if the price continues to go higher, of course, that specific area will be our next target. But in order for us to achieve this objective, we need to identify and observe some prerequisites for this growth. At the moment, we don't see them, but perhaps all of this will unfold in the very near future. But let's also carefully evaluate what to do in the case of downward movements. Of course, we have support at the level of 73,400 and at 71,637. Now you might wonder why these levels specifically. The 73,400 level previously acted as a key level of resistance for us, and as you can already understand, now it serves as a very significant area of support. Moreover, if we examine the situation a bit more closely, we'll see that the lows of the long traders who placed their stop losses just below these minimums have not yet been taken out here. And it would be beneficial for the market to trigger those stops and only after that reach our designated support level. If we do not manage to stop right here and don't see any kind of significant reaction in the form of confirmation, let me remind you that ideally, it should happen in the following way. We sweep below these previous lows, then break through this high and consolidate above it. After which we can enter a position and accordingly set our targets on much higher price levels. If we don't see this pattern, then we'll look for our confirmations at the level of 71,637. And this is not so much a level, as it is just the initial starting point of the boundary of a small range that the price has established for us. We can see that for a very long time we were stuck in this accumulation, and essentially this entire zone will serve as a kind of support for us. Therefore, if you want to enter some medium-term positions, it's better to look for confirmation on the 4-hour time frame. But if you are trading very locally, you can open, say, a 15-minute or 1-hour time frame and observe the price reaction right from the beginning of this zone. This is the level of 71,637. And those levels that are currently our supports, let me remind you, that's the 76,335 level and the 73,400 level will become our resistances, and it will be necessary to start taking profits at these points. If we experience a much more significant decline and also consolidate below this zone, which is the critical $65,000 price level, then of course we'll be talking about a prolonged continuation of this current downward trend. For now, we don't see this happening at the moment. So we're not initiating any significant or major strategic actions. Right now, you could locally enter some short positions, but we don't just look at other people's ideas and jump into shorts, hoping the price will actually go lower. As professional traders in this market, we need to see our own signals and confirmations. That's why only if we consolidate below this volume zone will we begin to take more concrete and decisive action and start considering our shorts from a broader medium-term perspective. For now, since we don't see that happening yet, we're considering medium-term longs and will be looking to enter our positions at these specific price levels. Now, I want to update the situation on the coins we discussed in previous reviews, so feel free to write down new coins you'd like me to cover next time, as well as for us to analyze them in our Telegram channel, where there are even more useful breakdowns and setups. So write in, and next time you'll see exactly that coin. Well, let's get started. So we have Doge on the 4-hour time frame. As we discussed last time, we said that if we consolidate below this break, then we can certainly begin to look at some short positions with a stop just above this high at the specific level of 0.1188. As a result, we saw the price consolidate below, do a retest, and now we've already reached our first resistance level. So our risk is already reduced. And overall, we are in a pretty good situation, considering that a more long-term correction is starting to unfold right now. And if we take a closer look at the data, we will see that most altcoins are already sitting near their dynamic lines, or are positioned right at the volume shelf. But in this regard, Doge is currently lagging behind, at least for now, and we can also see a downward movement where we can lock in part of our position, and that level is 0.09866. So at this very moment, the situation is favorable for us, and we simply continue to follow our trading idea and hold our position. The situation with the JA coin is quite comparable in nature. We saw a consolidation below the breakdown, did a retest, and then gradually trended further down, reaching our take profit and support levels. And the first level was at the level of 0.22278. Here the price stayed at this level for a while, and then we continued the downward movement and have now reached the volume shelf and our support level. Now, as we can see on the chart, the price is currently trying to show us some kind of initial reaction. If we do see it holding here, then overall it is possible to enter some long positions from the retest level as well. If, however, we do not see this reaction and instead break straight through this significant volume shelf, consolidating firmly below the 0.18821 mark, then in this specific case it is much more likely that we will continue down to our primary support zone, that is the 0.16888 level. As of this moment, we are still maintaining a short position and will be looking to secure partial profits at these levels. So at the moment we have 2 take profit targets, and overall the stop can already be moved to break even while we wait for this position to play out. Overall, we've captured quite a substantial price move. You can see that we have a very significant and clear cascade of long liquidations. This is exactly the specific area where the long traders have placed their stop losses, and we can see that many of these previous lows have not yet been updated. So if we break through the 18,821 price level, we can say that the price will likely go after these stops, and with a strong impulse we could take out all these lows. So be prepared for this. If you are currently holding short positions, this is an exceptionally favorable area and a strategic zone to consider taking your profits. If you are not holding any shorts yet, then if we decisively break through the current support and consolidate below it, it presents a very good opportunity to initiate a new short entry position. The nearest resistance level is situated directly above this volume shelf, which will most likely coincide perfectly with the previous high of this specific zone. This is approximately at the 0.2063 mark. Unless, of course, we go higher now, but the main idea here, I hope you understood it, we are watching the 0.18821 level. If we break through and consolidate, then short positions can also be considered until the nearest take profit point, the 0.16888 price level, with the potential to effectively sweep through all of this existing long side liquidity. If, however, we now stay above and see confirmation of this breakout in roughly this form, then we can enter local long positions up to the immediate upside target resistance level, which I would personally choose to set slightly lower down at 0.21883. So, the ORDI coin 4-hour time frame, and we talked about the 5.017 level. If we successfully break through this level but do not consolidate below it, in other words, we take out all of this long liquidity and remain above this level, then we can certainly talk about the potential continuation of the upward movement. But if we see a clear and sustained consolidation below this level, that would strongly indicate the likelihood of a significant downward movement. And that's exactly what we saw. We took out this long liquidity and at the same time consolidated below this level and below the volume shelf. Following this, we moved down to our next level of support, where we also saw a clear upward reaction. This is the 4,569 mark. We also had a dynamic trend line here that served as support for us, but shortly after that we broke right through it. This aligned perfectly and coincided exactly with the volume shelf. The price then retested this dynamic trend line and the horizontal level, and we also continued to move significantly lower to our next support zone. This is the 3,841 mark. The price literally just barely missed reaching here, but the idea itself already played out, so overall we did quite well here. Notice that we didn't guess anything. We saw a consolidation, that's it. We entered shorts, we saw a consolidation, entered on the retest, and took our short positions. That's why the key idea right now is not to try to predict what will happen in the market, but simply to follow your own scenario. If A happens, then we do B. If C happens, then we do D. That's all there is to it. It's a very simple mechanism that you should follow in the market as a trader. So the last coin will be TAO on the 4-hour time frame. I covered it in our Telegram channel, Solo Trade, so check it out. The link will be in the description if you want to stay updated on all the events and updates happening in the market. Here, I mentioned that if we break through and consolidate below this small dynamic line, then we can talk about moving towards our support zone. Soon that's exactly what happened. We successfully broke through, did a clean retest, and eventually moved even lower. After that, the price also started to correct, reaching our dynamic level, because as we can clearly see, the price often came to this specific area and bounced off it. If we break through it and consolidate below, we can talk about a retest and a further move down. As a result, we saw that the price consolidated, did a retest of this level, and in general, the volume shelf. And we also continued the downward movements that we had originally expected. We have already reached our support level. This is the mark of 263.44. We took the first profit for those who entered a short position, and our second profit target is at 249.88. Right here, I think you can consider closing out the majority of the short positions you currently have open. Alternatively, you can consider aiming for this specific target if you are planning to enter into new shorts now, if you didn't manage to do so earlier. And notice, here the situation is very similar with the same AD. We see that there is a plateau in the volumes, we see that there is some kind of consolidation where we stayed for quite a long time. If we consolidate underneath this plateau and below this traded volume, then we can talk about a continuation of this downward movement, and it will likely be quite significant. And after that, we will most likely head towards the psychological level of the $200 mark, which would mean a substantial drop of almost 20% from this current level. So you need to be very careful here and watch closely for further confirmations. Again, we're not making anything up, we're simply following our scenario. So friends, thank you for watching this video to the end. Write your coins in the comments. Don't forget that it's not the smartest who win, but those who stick to their system.